Hey everybody, Jason Burmis here, and I kind of missed the boat on this one by reporting on it right away, but I think that it's really time to look at Mike Lee, and I'll be honest, I don't know much about his policies other than the fact that I like what he said after this presentation that was anything but a presentation. That we now know they had no evidence of an imminent threat. There was no imminent threat. We knew that before. Anybody paying attention would have known that before. But not only the amount of passion and anger, but discernment he used in how he presented his information, and that the briefing was basically a joke. And he's got jokes. After this, we're going to play Trump's response. Some said it was the greatest presentation and the greatest briefing they've ever seen. Come on, man. Are you kidding me? But Mike Lee in the past pretty much tore apart the Ocasio-Cortez Green New Deal. So as a bonus, we're going to go through that. But what I really want to do is get to this, because this is where it's really important, right, guys?
Manner in which he has approached his commander-in-chief powers. I believe that more than any other president in my lifetime, President Trump has shown a lot of restraint. He's been reluctant to get us involved in wars all over the globe. He's been very mindful and respectful of the fact that when the American people are asked to give up blood and treasure, they're sending off their sons and their daughters, their moms and their dads into battlefield.
So again, he was very articulate to start this, very smart.
And he's therefore very careful about it. I respect that enormously. My comments at the moment are not directed toward the attack that occurred on Friday. We'll leave that to another day. I will say that we were brought into this briefing today to talk to us about that attack on Friday. I had hoped and expected to receive more information outlining the legal, factual, and moral justification for the attack.
The legal, factual, and moral justification of the attack. Again, guy's killing it.
I was left somewhat unsatisfied on that front. The briefing lasted only 75 minutes, whereupon our briefers left. This, however, is not the biggest problem I have with the briefing, which I would add was probably the worst briefing I've seen, at least on a military issue, in the 9 years I've served in the United States Senate.
Worst one ever on a military issue in almost a decade. No big deal. We'll continue.
What I found so distressing about that briefing was that one of the messages we received from the briefers was, do not debate, do not discuss the issue of the appropriateness of further military intervention against Iran. And that if you do, you'll be emboldening Iran. The implication being that we would somehow be making America less safe by having a debate or a discussion.
God forbid people take different viewpoints and then we lay out our cases, hopefully in a factual manner, based on evidence, documentation, eyewitness accounts, and then make a decision. Gee, this Mike Lee guy, he's just nutty.
About the appropriateness of further military involvement against the government of Iran. Now, I find this insulting and demeaning. Not personally, but to the office that each of the 100 senators in this building happens to hold. I find it insulting and I find it demeaning to the Constitution of the United States, to which we've all sworn an oath. It is, after all, the prerogative of the legislative branch to declare war. Article 1, Section 8 makes that very clear. Alexander Hamilton in Federalist Number 69 made clear that this was a sharp contrast from the form of government that we had prior to the Revolution, a form of government in which the executive, the king, had the power to take us to war. He did not need the parliament to weigh in on it, to support it. That was the parliament's job after the fact, after we had gone into war.
That's right. See, we originally created a system where we were supposed to have checks and balances. Guess what? We don't have that system anymore. We haven't declared war in a long, long time. But hey, drone missiles on military figures from other nations are A-OK. By the way, thumbs this video up, sub and share if you're new to the Burmese Brigade. Let's continue with Mike Lee.
This, Hamilton explained in Federalist 69, is exactly the reason why this power was put in Article 1, Section 8, in the branch of government most accountable to the people at the most regular intervals. When we send our brave soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines into harm's way, we owe the American people the decent courtesy to follow the Constitution, to debate and discuss these actions. For them to tell us that either through a War Powers Act resolution or otherwise, for us to debate and discuss these things on the Senate floor would somehow weaken the American cause and embolden Iran in any other actions, I find very insulting. Now, look.
I find it very insulting too, Mike. Good for you.
I hope that they'll come back and they'll say, no, you misunderstood us. We didn't say that at all. I wish I could believe that. I will note that when those words were uttered, not one of the briefers stood in objection. Not one of the briefers pushed back on that and said, we want to make clear that this is still the constitutional prerogative of Congress. I also want to make clear that I walked into that briefing undecided as to whether to support the resolution under the War Powers Act introduced by Senator Kaine. Now, Senator Kaine and I have had some discussions. I've got some concerns with some of the language, particularly in some of the whereas clauses that he's introduced. He's agreed to make some changes. And I can say that after that briefing is what changed my mind. That briefing is what brought me on board, together with the amendments that Senator Kaine has agreed to make. I'm now going to support it. I walked into the briefing undecided. I walked out decided, specifically because of what happened in that briefing. It is not acceptable for officials within the executive branch of government, I don't care whether they're with the CIA, with the Department of Defense, or otherwise, to come in and tell us that we can't debate and discuss the appropriateness of military intervention against Iran.
No kidding. But that's where we're at. We decide. We're the national security apparatus. We're the central intelligence community. That whole intelligence community that told you the Ruskies and Poot-Poot were puppeteering the whole thing and still are. The same ones that told you Al-Qaeda attacked us on 9/11 with no help from anybody else. And there's no cover up there either. The same people that encourage a Guantanamo Bay and Abu Ghraib and another delicious black site. The same people that are certain that Assad gasses his own people. Lately, I guess, in April of 2018 in Duma. Those are the people. Let's let Mike finish. Then we're going to hear the Trump retort.
It's un-American. It's unconstitutional. And it's wrong. And I hope and expect that they will show greater deference to their own limited power in the future and to the power that belongs to Congress. This is not about us. It's not about any one of us. This is about our fidelity to those we represent. These powers are not ours. They don't belong to any of us. But when we allow them to be exercised through the wrong branches of government, with the wrong process, when you don't have debate and discussion, you don't allow the process itself to correct itself for the American people who will be most affected by these decisions to weigh in. That was insulting. That was demeaning to the process ordained by the Constitution, and I find it completely unacceptable. On that basis, I've decided to support Senator Kaine's resolution, subject to the minor amendments that he and I discussed earlier today. Senator Paul.
So, yeah, we're not even going to play Rand Paul. We're going to go to the Trump response.
Here's what happened on that. I had calls from numerous senators and numerous congressmen and women saying it was the greatest presentation they've ever had. Mike and Rand Paul disagreed because they want information that, honestly, I think is very hard to get. It's okay if the military wants to give it, but they didn't want to give it. And it really had to do with sources and information that we had that really should remain at a very high level.
Yeah, the information that there was no imminent attack and you wanted to try to provoke a war, huh? You're still not showing any. And it's now coming out that it seems like in Yemen they had another Iranian Revolutionary Guard target. Okay? Because that Yemen proxy war nobody knows about continued under his what? executive order to veto the resolution to get us uninvolved in that. What does that tell you? You know, old boss, same as the new boss, man. I want to believe something different, but I have eyeballs. I have ears. I have a brain that still functions on a semi-normal level and hasn't been eviscerated by the mush bullshit that's projected all over the place. Thumbs this video up, sub and share, because we're going to switch gears. This is kind of almost a bonus end of the video where we're going to play Mike Lee in a hilarious... I mean, this is another reason I've liked his candor before, and I've liked some of the things he said on the Green New Deal. Now, before we get there, I do want to say this. Get ready, guys, because we've got a new platform. You know, everybody's asking me how I'm going to diversify or what's going to happen after YouTube. Well, I've now just negotiated a tentative deal where starting next week there will be one video 5 days a week that is exclusive to this subscription service called Rokfin. Now, Rokfin. I'm sorry, Rokfin. It's Rokfin. Why did I choose this? Well, I chose this because it's not what you would think. Ben Askren, Jordan Burroughs, who's an amazing wrestler. Obviously, Askren, notorious in the MMA community these days. They're all here. And then they also have like a media platform. So it is a subscription service. We'll talk about it more in the days and weeks to come. But let's get to Mike Lee. Okay? Let's get to Mike Lee. And Flick Off, thank you so much for the super chat. Was that 80 million bounty legit? I've only seen it a few places. It does seem like that was legit. But maybe I could be refuted. If anybody has any information that it was indeed not legit, I'm willing to listen to it. All right, so here we go. Get ready. Gear up.
Senator from Utah.
Mr. President, fear has become an all too prevalent quality in American political discourse. And unfortunately, fear is unavoidable when debating the substance of the resolution before this body today. That is climate change, socialism, and the Green New Deal. On entering this debate, I have a little fear in my heart as well. But, Mr. President, my fear at this moment may be just a little different than that of some of my colleagues. Unlike some of my colleagues, I'm not immediately afraid of what carbon emissions unaddressed might do to our environment in the near-term future, or our civilization, or our planet in the next few years. Unlike others, I'm not immediately afraid of what the Green New Deal would do to our economy and our government. After all, this isn't going to pass. Not today, not anytime soon, certainly. Rather, after reading the Green New Deal, I'm mostly afraid of not being able to get through this speech with a straight face. For Mr. President, I rise today to consider the Green New Deal with the seriousness it deserves. This is, of course, a picture of former President Ronald Reagan naturally firing a machine gun while riding on the back of a dinosaur. You'll notice a couple of important features here. First of all, the rocket launcher strapped to President Reagan's back, and then the stirring, unmistakable patriotism of the velociraptor holding up a tattered American flag, a symbol of all it means to be an American. Now, critics might quibble with this depiction of the climactic battle of the Cold War, because while awesome, in real life there was no climactic battle. There was no battle with or without velociraptors. The Cold War, as we all know, was won without firing a shot. But that quibble actually serves our purposes here today, Mr. President, because this image has as much to do with overcoming communism in the 20th century as the Green New Deal has to do with overcoming climate change in the 21st. The aspirations of the proposal have been called radical. They've been called extreme. But mostly, they're ridiculous. There isn't a single serious idea here, not one. To illustrate,
I would disagree. There's a couple. For instance, I really think that we could really change this country and its economy if we were to build a high-speed railway system the same way that Eisenhower took the initiative to build our countrywide highway system, our interstates. Okay? If we were to do that on any large-scale level with, of course, larger stations in major areas or like let's say we had one in an Albany instead of just in New York City, an Albany, New York City, a DC. I mean, that would be something, although it's not outlined that way, they do talk about maglev trains, et cetera. So there are some decent ideas, but, I did extensive work on the Green New Deal when I was over at We Are Change. You can always go check that out. Let's let Mike Lee continue.
let me highlight two of the most prominent goals produced by the plan's authors. Goal number one, the Green New Deal calls essentially for the elimination of airplanes. Now, this might seem merely ambitious for politicians who represent the densely populated northeastern United States. But how is it supposed to work for our fellow citizens who don't live somewhere between Washington, D.C. and Boston? In a future without air travel, how are we supposed to get around the vast expanses of, say, Alaska during the winter? Well, I'll tell you how. Tauntauns, Mr. President. This is a beloved species of reptomammals, native to the ice planet of Hoth. Now, while perhaps not as efficient in some ways as airplanes or as snowmobiles, these hairy bipedal species of space lizards offer their own unique benefits. Not only are tauntauns carbon neutral, but according to a report a long time ago and issued far, far away, they may even be fully recyclable and usable for their warmth, especially on a cold night. What about Hawaii? Isolated 2,000 miles out into the Pacific Ocean. Under the Green New Deal's effective airplane prohibition, how are people there supposed to get to and from the mainland? And how are they supposed to maintain that significant portion of their economy that's based on tourism? At that distance, swimming would, of course, be out of the question, and jet skis are notorious gas guzzlers. No, all residents of Hawaii would be left with is this. This is a picture of Aquaman, a superhero from the undersea kingdom of Atlantis, and notably here, a founding member of the Super Friends. I draw your attention, Mr. President, to the 20-foot impressive seahorse he's riding. Under the Green New Deal, this is probably Hawaii's best bet. Now, I'm the first to admit that a massive fleet of giant, highly trained seahorses would be cool. It would be really, really awesome. But we have to consider a few things. We have no idea about scalability or domestic capacity in this sector. The last thing we want is to ban all airplanes and only then find out that China or Russia may have already established strategic hippocampus programs designed to cut the United States out of the global market. Mr. President, we must not allow and cannot tolerate a giant seahorse gap. Goal number two. The Green New Deal anticipates the elimination of all cows.
Let's just stop this because obviously, guys, you know why I'm playing this, right? Hopefully, I'm making people understand this guy has a sense of humor. He's pretty funny. And he's also pretty anti-war. He's not perfect. None of these guys are perfect. But, if you watch the beginning of this video, he made a lot more sense than Trump saying. Some people called him up, told him it was the best presentation and briefing of all time. All right? So those asking, this is his presentation in rebuttal to the Green New Deal. This is not satire. He did this on the Senate floor.
Talking points released by the sponsors of the resolution the day it was introduced. cited the goal of, quote, fully getting rid of, and I'll paraphrase a little bit here, flatulating cows. Now, Mr. President, I share their concern. But honestly, I think you've got to remember that if they think the cows smell bad, just wait till they get a whiff of the seahorses. But back to the cattle. I've got a chart to illustrate this trend. As you can see, Mr. President, on the left, these little cows represent the bovine population of America today. On the right is the future population under the Green New Deal. We would go from about 94 million cows to 0 cows. No more milk, no more cheese, no more steak, no more hamburgers. Over the state work period last week, I visited some farms to find out for myself what Utah's own bovine community might think of the Green New Deal. Every cow I spoke to said the same thing. Boo. The authors of this proposal will protest that these goals are not actually part of the Green New Deal, but were merely included in supporting documents, accidentally sent out by the office of the lead sponsor in the House of Representatives. But, Mr. President, this only makes my point. The supporters of the Green New Deal want Americans to trust them to reorganize our entire society, our entire economy, to restructure our very way of life, when they couldn't even figure out how to send out the right press release. The Green New Deal is not a serious policy document because it's not a policy document at all. It is, in fact, an aesthetic one.
Let's stop it here. Guys, just so you know, it does go on for another 5 minutes. Don't get me wrong. The guy's got great material, but I'll let you go check it out yourself. In fact, I'll even, for you enjoying it right here, I will put this in so after the video is over, you can check it out in the live chat. There's the link. So once again, guys, big news. You know, I'm going to be doing 5 exclusive videos for Rockfin a week. And hopefully you guys are going to subscribe, at least the hardcores of the Burmese Brigade. You'll check it out. It's going to be really awesome and different. I'm doing different things there, too, I think. Excuse me. I even think they have a live platform so we can all interact together. Oh, man, excuse me. I ate for the first time just before this show. Doing it 3 to 7 times a day on this channel, and that won't change. We'll still do it 3 to 7 times a day on this channel, do breaking news, you better believe it. I'm also a documentary filmmaker. Loose Change, Final Cut, Fabled Enemies, Invisible Empire, A New World Order Defined, and Shade the Motion Picture are all free right here, right now. Not asking for your money, asking for your eyes so we can get the information out to people. Also, need you to, you know, throw this out there. And one of my first Rockfin videos, of course, will be on the Conor McGregor evidence, and we took yet another step in the right direction for setting up that AMA where you'll learn that at the end of the day, there is no doubt that this young lady suffered a horrendous ordeal. The examinations and all of the evidence shows that she was raped and very badly assaulted in that penthouse suite. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. And guys, if you want to financially support me, yeah, the Rockfin thing is going to be great. But obviously, the meat and potatoes is still the GoFundMe. $5, $10, $15, it means the world to me. It keeps me afloat. It keeps me being able to do this for you guys. So consider it, man. If you like independent information, if you like a guy that's not going to come with the bullshit left or right spin that's going to take on all sides of the political spectrum, hopefully I'm your dude. I'll see you guys on the flip side.